All right, guys, can we start the session? Am I audible to all of you? Can you just confirm? Yes. Okay. All right. All right, guys. Okay. So voice is clear and it's perfectly fine. So we can start the session, but we will be waiting for another 5 minutes. So we can wait for some more participants to join. Okay. So guys, we can go for a quick recap of what we have done yesterday, and also we can discuss any questions. If you, yes, Sangeeta, you can, yeah, I'll unmute one by one. If you raise your hands for the next 5 minutes, we can discuss the questions. Okay. So let me stop recording, guys. Okay. So now we will continue with today's discussion. So here we are going to focus on handling situational questions related to ethical governance. So we have already discussed how to handle the situational questions. Now here I'm going more specific. Here the situational questions which are connected with ethical governance. Now, so first, what we need to know is why they are asking this question, to know what you need to answer, right? So basically, these questions are designed to understand how well you will apply the ethical principles to real world governance challenges. Okay, so it's not about what you have learned in theory in your GS2 or in your GS4 ethics paper. They are actually going to check your practical skills when it comes to the real world governance challenges. So you see, as a civil servant, you will often face such situations where you need to make such tough decisions in crisis situations, and the panel want to see how can you take such kind of decision, whether you can make those decisions while upholding what factors: integrity, transparency, and fairness. These are the three main ethical standards that I always stress upon. That's what they are always looking upon. So any decisions that you are taking, any communication that you are making with the board, make sure that you have absolute integrity in what you are talking about, and there is some element of transparency which is involved, and also there is fairness in your decision. Just 1 minute, guys. Okay. So we were talking about situational questions. Okay. So these questions, the situational questions, if you see, they are not only going to test your ability to solve problems, not just for testing or understanding your ability to solve problem, but also how you balance ethics with the practical administration. See, solution, if I want to, control violence, a protest, I can use force because I have, any force which is available as a superintendent of police or a district magistrate, you can do that. But it's not about that, right? How ethically you will handle the situation, how, you will consider the public safety, how, yeah, you will be showing that integrity aspect and transparency, fairness in that situation, whether you will be considering them and their demands and the reason for the protest and everything. So all these will be taken into consideration. Practical solution I can easily solve with the force, but will that be the actual solution which is expected and required? No, right? So they will be testing all of these. And in my interviews also, I have discussed before also these examples related to this. I have encountered several of these questions: situational questions related to governance challenges, and ethics in governance, etc. See, and I found it's very important to think carefully about the broader impact of your decision always before you answer, and how they align with the ethical standards. So make sure that any answer that you're actually going to present to them, if it is related to situational questions which is involving some ethical governance or any ethical issues, for that matter all the issues, there will be one side that is part of ethics. So transparency element you need to bring in, accountability element you need to bring in, integrity, absolute 100% integrity, and it is non-negotiable when it comes to civil services, that you need to bring in fairness. Any action that you take, it is not delivering some privilege to some sections, and it should be equal, right? There should be fairness in your decisions and implementation. So these are what the things that we are going to focus, and we can quickly cover this. As we already discussed situational questions, the format, the structure almost remain the same. The situation will change. Here I'm going slightly specific to the ethical governance. So we will move slightly faster here compared to the previous discussions. Okay. See, guys, when answering situational questions related to ethical governance, I'm specific here. It's very important to have a very clear understanding of the ethical principles that guide the civil servants. So fundamentally, what you're looking for, you are looking for integrity. You are looking for fairness, accountability, transparency. These are the fundamental ethical standards which are the bare minimum expected from a civil servant at any point of time in any office decision. I repeat, integrity, fairness, right? No section is considered impartially or favored more, and accountability and transparency. These are the ethical standard which is expected, the minimum fundamental ethical standards expected from a civil servant at any given point of time in any decision that you make. Okay, so integrity means, now these are things which I don't want to discuss here because you have already done with the ethics paper in detail, and you might be scoring really good also in that paper, but that doesn't make any impact here. Okay, so we'll briefly talk about this also. Integrity means being honest and upholding ethical standards even when it's difficult. In any circumstances, any situation, being honest is what you mean by integrity. And civil servants must always prioritize doing what's right over what's easy. Okay, so always keep this in mind. There will be certain things which are easy to do, but you need to compromise on ethical standards. So always focus and prioritize on what's right, what's just. In that, the ethical dimensions will come. And you need to prioritize what is just, what is right, than what is easy. Okay, easy things anyone can do, guys. 1 minute, guys. Right, okay. Now, fairness, it's about treating everyone equally under the law, ensuring that your decisions do not favor any one group over the other. Everyone is treated equally. That's what you mean by fairness. And as a civil servant, you must be very much committed to impartiality. That's a very important ethical standard. So you must be impartial and making decisions that benefit the public as a whole. Now, coming to accountability, which means being responsible for your actions and decisions. So civil servants must be open to scrutiny and willing to explain their decisions to public. So that extreme level of accountability is also required and expected. Transparency, that actually ensures the government actions and decisions are open to the public oversight. So it builds trust between the government and the people by ensuring that decisions are made openly and fairly. So whether you are working in administration or law enforcement, whether you are an IAS officer or IPS officer, these are principles which should guide your decision making. For example, if you're an IAS officer working on implementing a welfare scheme, you need to ensure that resources are distributed fairly and transparently. Similarly, if you're an IPS officer handling the protest, make sure, or you must balance maintaining law and order with the protesting, the protection of the citizens and their rights to peaceful protest or peaceful assembly also. Okay, so this is things which I can give as an example and that you need to take into consideration when you face these situations. Right, next slide. So I hope this is very clear. Integrity, fairness, accountability, transparency. Now we'll move on to the structuring part. This is the most important part of our all discussions. So let's structure how your answer should be. So again, to give a better answer, it's not that you're going to decide your answer at that point of time. If this question is asked, this is a structure. Last sessions also, we followed the same thing. So any question, situational question related to this is asked, this is what I'm going to deliver. Okay, the situation may vary. The structure will help you to give an objective answer, no matter what is the situation, and also help you that you convey the things that they are looking for. Irrespective of the question, they are looking for certain qualities. So irrespective of your answer to that question, your qualities need to be reflected. That you will be able to do with the help of a structure. If you follow a structure where it is, automatically the qualities are there, you just need to follow that formula. Okay, so automatically it doesn't matter, whatever is the question, you deliver what you are expected to deliver and what they are expecting from you. So first is identifying the ethical dilemma. So guys, start by identifying the core ethical conflicts here, conflict which is involved in the given situation. So whatever is the given situation, try to identify the conflict. So is it a situation where you must choose between following the law and doing what is morally right? Okay, so sometimes when you follow the law, your inner mind says that's not right. So that brings, see, if dilemma is not there, there is no problem. Things will be very easy, right? When you evacuate some public from their own place, it may be legal, but your inner mind may tell you that it's not just. So here there is an ethical conflict. So understanding the ethical issue, is the first step here. Okay, so this ethical issue firsthand is your first step. Okay, and then consider the stakeholders involved. So think about who will be affected by your decision. Are you dealing with the public, government official, or vulnerable communities? Now, understanding the stakeholders will actually help you to assess the broader impact of your decision. So that's the second step. Again, now weigh the ethical and practical options. So consider the different courses of action. What are the ethical implications of each option? And what are the practical challenges that you come across? Sometimes you may have to choose between doing what is ethically right and what is immediately practical. So you weigh the options. And finally, you have to take the decision. So after considering the options, make a decision that is both ethically sound and practical. So you need to take a decision that is practical and ethically well-rounded also. So be sure to justify your decision, explaining why it aligns with ethical principles and how it benefits a greater public good. And that is also need to be done. Now, I hope you understood the 4 steps that you need to follow here. So you can see here very clearly, identify the dilemma, consider the stakeholders, weigh the options, and finally make the decision and communicate why you took this decision like that. For example, if you are asked to, like, if you're asked how you handle a situation where a senior official pressures you to approve a project that violate environmental regulations, you got pressure from senior official, that means you need to bend the rules. So here it's between, you need to follow the senior official, but at the same time he is asking you to do some illegal things, right? Compromise on the rules. So what you will say? Just think about this for a moment. So should I answer from my perspective or your perspective? Or I'll guide you, right? Or I'll answer from my perspective here. Let me frame an answer. Or I can tell you, I can guide you what is expected and what you need to tell you, right? So I will first acknowledge the importance of the project. That's the first thing. That's a priority. But emphasize that it cannot be approved if it violates the environmental laws. So first thing, I have to acknowledge that this is important and this is good, but there are certain environmental laws. So here there is a problem. So that is your first step. Here what you're doing, you're identifying the ethical dilemma. The project is good and the senior has also told you to do it, but there is a problem with the rule. Then I would consider the impact on the environment and local communities that depend on these natural resources. So here the impact on environment and at the same time, the local communities, they are the stakeholders. So I'm here considering the stakeholders. Then while the project might offer short-term economic benefits, the long-term environmental damage and degradation would outweigh these gains. So you are weighing the options. Either I can go for the project or not go for the project. If I go for the project, short-term gain. but long-term consequences. But if I won't go for it, short-term, we may not get this, but long-term consequences is, something which is huge, which I can avoid. So which is better? Now you weigh the options. So I would suggest an alternative solution then that aligns with environmental regulation and that ensures both development and sustainability are balanced. So that's how the 4 steps need to be followed. So here, whatever they are looking for is taken into consideration. Irrespective of the question that they're asking, your answer should follow the same structure. So you are conveying the message that they are looking for. It's not the answer, it's the message that you have these qualities which they are looking from you as a civil servant. That's why we are shaping and framing each of the possible questions. And with one-to-one sessions, we'll make sure that things are done properly. Okay. Now moving on to the next one. See, for IAS aspirants, because I'm talking more about this as I have given my preferences IPS. So balancing ethics with practical challenges, particularly important in law enforcement. Okay, so they'll ask you a lot of questions, a lot of custodial related death and interrogations related that questions, human right related questions, etc. will be there. So the decisions you make as an IPS officer can directly impact public safety, and you will often have to make quick decisions while considering both ethical principles and practical realities. So firstly, handling the public protest. Most of the time, you will have to face this challenge and this issue. One common situation in law enforcement, if you see, is the management or managing the public protest. On one hand, you must maintain law and order, that is your prime responsibility. But on the other hand, you need to protect the citizens who are protesting also. They have a right for peaceful assembly. They have a right to peaceful protest. Now, when answering questions about public protest, always focus on the importance of proportionality in the use of force. If you have given IPS as a preference, always use the proportionality of use of force. In case of protest, you have to use force. No other option, right? You talk to them and other things are there, but there should be always a proportional use of force. And engaging in dialogue with the protest leaders to de-escalate the tension. So if you are getting a question related to public protest and you're handling, if you're not talking and mentioning about these 2 key principles, now from here, you are going to feed this in mind. I got this question on protest, what I need to bring in. I need to definitely talk about, engaging in dialogue with the protest leaders. That's very important, addressing their concerns and giving them some guarantee if possible to de-escalate the tension, to control them, and also the proportional use of force to control the law and order situation. That shows a lot of maturity from you. That shows a lot of understanding from you about what you want to become. Now, dealing with corruption. See, again, another challenge in law enforcement is dealing with corruption within the police force. So if you're asked about how you would handle corruption, okay, so you can emphasize your commitment to integrity and accountability. So always talk about that. And you could say that you would ensure a thorough investigation and that any officers involved in corrupt practices would face legal action, regardless of their rank. Then managing resource constraints. See, in many cases, law enforcement officers face resource constraints, especially in remote areas. And if you are asked how you would handle this, focus on the importance of prioritizing resources and collaborating with local communities to maintain public safety despite limitations. Okay? So, for example, if you're asked how you would manage a public protest that has the potential to turn violent, what you will say? You might say, while my primary responsibility is to maintain law and order, it's also important to ensure that the protesters' right to peacefully assembly or peaceful protest is respected. It's their right. So I have the responsibility to maintain the law and order, but at the same time, it is equally important to respect the others as well, their rights also. I would deploy police forces to monitor the situation and prevent violence. That's my job. But I would also engage in dialogue with the protest leaders to address their concerns and find a peaceful resolution. So I'm engaging with the protest leader. I told you this is a point which you are not supposed to miss. Now, if force is necessary, what you should mention here, I will use the force, but it would be proportional and aimed only at de-escalating the situation and not to harm them. If I need to de-escalate the situation and if force is necessary, I will be using that, but it will be proportional only for this purpose. So I hope this is very, very clear and this is something that you need to follow. Okay, so what you're saying, your primary responsibility is managing law and order, but at the same time, you understand the importance of the protesters' right to peacefully protest. Okay, and you will deploy the police force to monitor the situation and prevent violence. That should be there. That's your first thing that you need to do. And you will also engage in dialogue with the protest leaders to understand their concerns and to de-escalate the tension. And then if force is necessary, you will use that in proportion and only to de-escalate the violence. They asked in one of my interview, so how I will handle a situation where local politicians were pressurizing the police force to overlook illegal activities. This is again, as an IPS officer, they're asking the question. So here, I emphasize the importance of integrity and explain that I would refuse to compromise on the law, even if it meant to face political pressure. Still, I won't compromise on the law. And I also discussed how I would ensure that the police force remained accountable to the public and acted in accordance with the law. So these are things which you can mention, and this is how you can actually control that particular situation and the question. So this is what we discussed. Yeah. Now handling questions in general governance. So see, guys, when it comes to general governance, situational questions often involve challenges related to resource allocation. So previously I discussed specific to IPS. Now I'm talking general. So here it could be resource allocation. It could be related to transparency and addressing the public grievances, etc. So the key to answering these questions is to demonstrate that you can make decisions that are both practically and ethically sound. This is very important. So you need to give a practically possible answer, realistically, a possible answer, and at the same time ethically sound also. So ensuring that the governance remains transparent and accountable. Always make sure that the governance part is always transparent and accountable, and your answer should be revolving around that. Now, these are the things that you can focus on: managing resource allocation. This is one of the area they'll ask you question. One common situation is like this only. And then they can ask you ensuring transparency related questions. So when it comes to managing resource allocation, this is one of the common situation which is deciding like how to allocate limited resource in a way that is fair and equitable. Right. If you need to talk about fairness, you have to the resource allocation need to be there should not be any impartiality. No one should be favored. Everyone should be given equally. So when answering questions about resource allocation, always emphasize the importance of prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable population while ensuring that resources are used efficiently. You always consider the resources are limited, so we need to focus more on the most vulnerable. Okay, and now comes to transparency. See, guys, in many governance scenario, any questions you get, you may be asked about how you would ensure transparency in government projects. So focus on the importance of open communication with the public, regular audits, and accountability mechanism to prevent corruption and ensure that public funds are used responsibly. Okay. Now, coming to addressing the public grievances. See, when it comes to addressing public grievances, your response should focus on empathy and responsiveness. So That's very important. Empathy and responsiveness. And you are going to explain how you would set up mechanisms to listen to public concerns, address their concerns in timely manner, and ensure that government actions are in line with the needs of the people. These are very, very important. For example, if you're asked how you would handle a situation where there are competing, demands for government resources from different communities. So you are handling a situation where there are competing demands for government resources from different communities. What you will do is you will prioritize resource allocation based on need, ensuring that vulnerable communities receive the support they require. Okay, so prioritize the vulnerable communities here. At the same time, you will also ensure transparency in decision-making process by engaging with all stakeholders and making the criteria for resource distribution public. That's something which you need to do. So you are ensuring transparency in that way. Now, again, in one of my interview, I was asked how I will address complaints about the misuse of government funds in a public welfare project. So what I did is I explained that I would ensure a thorough audit of the project, make the findings public, and take the corrective action if any misuse was found. I'll take corrective action. So by focusing on transparency and accountability, I demonstrated my commitment to ethical governance here. So that's how you will be framing the answer. Okay. Now, coming to personal experience, again, in one of my interview, I was asked about a situational question that how I would handle a case where a senior officer was pressurizing me to approve a project that clearly violate environmental laws. I think we just discussed before. So the moment you get this question, you know this is a test of your ethical judgment and your ability to stand firm in the face of the pressure. So what you will do, you will start acknowledging the importance of project, but emphasize that it could not be approved if it violate environmental regulation. So there I have discussed it as an example for the 4 steps. So here I'll tell you how practically I will answer by following the 4 steps. So I acknowledge the importance of the project, but emphasize that it could not be approved as it is violation of environmental regulation. Then I explained that approving the project would not it not only illegal but would also cause long-term harm to the environment and to the local community. So it's not sustainable as well. And instead, I offered an alternative solution, suggesting that the project could be redesigned to meet the environmental standards while still achieving its goals, as mentioned. So it's over. So you covered everything systematically. Now, see here, what you did is you are balancing ethical principles with a practical solution. So with this, I was able to demonstrate that I could make decisions that upheld the law and protected public welfare, even in challenging situations. Perfect. So that's about this. And now let's conclude. See, guys, what I want to tell you is, in conclusion, situational questions related to ethical governance are very important part of your interview. Very important, and they will ask you. Okay, and they are going to test your ability to make ethically sound decision in complex situations. So you need to make sure to understand the key ethical principles that guide the public service. What are they? Transparency, accountability, integrity, fairness. Okay, and use a structured approach to analyze the situation. You remember the approach. So you need to identify the issue, bring the stakeholders, weigh the options, take a balanced decision, etc. And always remember to balance the ethical consideration with practical solution. And always think about the broader impact of your decision. Okay, now you need to practice answering situational questions from here onwards in mock interviews and with the one-to-one sessions. We will be discussing that. And that's how you will be mastering this area. So what you can do as an assignment, take a situation, one of the situation that I have discussed as example, Follow the process, make your answer, record the video, watch it, send to us. Okay. So definitely you can send in the group, or if you feel like you don't want to send in the group at this point of time, you can send to me. Okay. So now I will unmute one by one. We can start discussing. Before that, let me stop recording, guys. Just 1 minute.